Welcome to the new school. What we wanted to do was talk about the concept of authenticity and vulnerability in an industry that has typically been super buttoned up, super professional, and a little bit old school. Hello and welcome to episode number 2 of season 2 of the New School Video Podcast. We couldn't be more excited to have you here. So in this season, we're really going deep on marketing tactics and strategy for advisors. So if you haven't listened to episode 1, I'd go back and listen to it because we had Samantha Russell from FMG, and she talked about video and her journey. And of course, you know, we're mad fans of video. She also talked about zero-click content to apply across social media and how to do that. And we've been applying it since we had her on the podcast. And of course, what are we finding? Deeper engagement across social media, not only for our own marketing, but for our advisors that we're coaching and consulting on. So if you haven't listened to that, go back. It actually works. And she'll give you step-by-step instructions on how to apply it and then talk to like why it actually works, right? In this episode, we're talking about the power of podcasting. So we love video, we love podcasting, and you might have seen we announced a partnership with ProudMouth this year, and together we've created the first end-to-end advisor podcasting solution. So we're so aligned with everything that they are doing. They were podcasting almost like before podcasting was a thing. And advisors can now come in our partnership, concept their podcast, launch it, have it be produced, publish it, and then have marketing and PR support to make sure that it's getting in front of the right people and that they're creating a conversion plan. So we have on this episode Matt Halloran, who is their Chief Revenue Officer and co-founder. You may have seen him at industry events across the country. He is so passionate about the power of podcasting. In this episode, of course, he's going to share why they believe in it, the impact it's had on their business, advisor businesses, and how advisors should really be thinking about podcasting. I mean, quite honestly, if I was an advisor, I would be podcasting. Add video to it, and you get so much content. You live on your clients' and prospects' phone, and it's a way to add so much value in a really intimate way where they're out working out or commuting or cooking and they're listening to you. So I would definitely be doing this. So ProudMouth is the top advisor podcasting firm in the country, and they have grown exponentially simply through the power of podcasting. So I don't know if you know this, but we've run the first ever Advisor Podcast Awards with Investment News 2 years in a row. And it's such a fulfilling experience to see all the change and impact that advisors are having with the power of podcasting. So let's get started.
This specific episode is sponsored by our Advisor Marketing Bootcamp, where we coach advisors in peer cohorts on how to develop their marketing message, understand their ideal clients, rock video and social media, launch their podcasts, YouTube channels, or blog to drive organic growth. And sign up for our free monthly marketing masterclass. Listen to the end of this episode for more details on this free resource.
What a special opportunity for us to have Matt Halloran, partner and chief relationship officer of ProudMouth, who is really responsible for a lot of the advisor podcasts across our industry and is typically the host of podcasts, not so much the guest. What's it feel like to be a guest today?
I'm nervous being a guest. I mean, I've done like 1,000 of these, and every time I'm a guest, I still have that little bit of queasiness, but I'll use that energy for good. I promise.
So I guess the question is, if you're thinking about podcasting, Matt, can you tell us a little bit about why you decided to double down on it at ProudMouth? I know you have an expansive background in marketing, digital marketing. You published a book. What was it that drew you specifically to podcasting for advisors and really in our industry?
Well, I think a lot of it had to do with we wanted to do it ourselves. And so everything that we've built at ProudMouth has been, we tested on ourselves first before we really bring it to a client. I don't know. That's just my partner and I's business model. So the funny thing is I had done everything that you would think to gain some level of celebrity in financial services. So I published 2 books. I published the first book on social media for financial advisors. I've keynote spoke. I've been featured in all of these things, right? Wall Street Journal, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not bragging here because it didn't really do that much, right? Like, I mean, I was like, some people kind of knew me. And then when we started podcasting, my influence just blew up. Like, I am at conferences now. People are like, oh my God, it's so neat to meet you. I'm like, what the heck's going on? And so we know that advisors can do it too. So when we first started, Kirk and I first started, we offered marketing and branding, and then we offered podcasting. And then Kirk was just like, this is so much more fun. Podcasting is so much more influential. Podcasting is so much easier and actually even more of a palatable price point, because branding, as you guys know, is actually quite an investment for an advisor. So we doubled down. And since we've doubled down, we've done about 7,000 episodes now for advisors and about 250,000 social media posts.
Wow. What do you attribute that influence to from podcasts? Like, if you were to get into the mindset of the listener, like, what do you attribute to that great influence, that celebrity effect, and the power that podcasts have that other marketing mediums don't?
I think it's the intimacy. So guys, people listen to podcasts in their quiet time. They're inviting you into their special time, getting ready in the morning, cooking food, exercising, commuting to work, right? Those are the times that people listen to podcasts. And I'm going to get really nerdy here, so just bear with this. So my master's degree was actually how to reduce auditory hallucinations in people who suffer from schizophrenia. And so I've studied audio and how and where the Broca's area is, which is where you process all of your audio. And we know that the kind of intimacy and how your brain interacts with audio only, not video, audio only, is a very, very different sort of thing, because fight or flight, you pay very close attention to what's going on in your ears. And that's why your brain actually values audio only more than many other stimulus. Does that make sense?
That's so interesting. Tell us more about that. Why is that? But I'm just trying to think about, like, it's almost like sometimes, like, video is such a powerful medium. Like, we're doing video on this at the same time. But I feel like there's something to be true. It's like just a simple case of, like, sometimes when you're in a panic or you're stressed, you can't for the life of you find your keys. It's like your eyes let you down. Like, you look, and like for sometimes you like oversee it because like your mind is working so fast. Are you saying like what you discovered in your studies is that isn't the case with audio?
It is. So there's 2 parts of that. Number one, it's people have, let's just look at music. Look at song within the animal kingdom. One of the most intimate ways to broadcast your appeal is by singing, right? Or vocalizing. And so from an evolutionary standpoint, this was as important as being able to see something that you're physically attracted to. But I'll partner that with this, because this is actually what's most important about the intimacy of podcasting. You're doing something else. Your guard is down, right? When you're driving, but you're listening to the podcast. When you're exercising, but you're listening to a podcast. The filters that we generally put in with the level of distraction from video, like what you guys are wearing, what I'm wearing, my background, your back, you know what I'm saying? I mean, there's all of these distractions with video that is actually interrupting them receiving our message, where in podcasting, that other stimulus is already being taken up by something that's generally active. And so the passivity of podcasting just changes that relationship. I hear people all the time, they come up to me and they say, "Man, I feel like I know you." I'm like, "I've never met you," which that's the other nice thing. And the reason why I believe, as Megan was talking about, why my celebrity or influence really picked up is because it's so convenient, right? Like, I can listen to a podcast again while I'm doing other things. Can't really watch a video while I'm doing other things. Like, I shouldn't be watching a video when I'm driving, right? I mean, that's dangerous. But you're usually, so that's kind of pulling that apart a little bit more.
Gosh, I love our New School podcast for so many reasons. One being that we have amazing guests on, like you, Matt, who teach us new things. I'm like sitting here thinking, all right, I've never considered the intimacy of podcasts. And then you said auditory signals in the animal kingdom, but I knew exactly what you meant. And now I'm going to carry that with me forever because it makes perfect sense and just isn't something that I've considered. And so now I need to know, your thesis was about, did you say auditory hallucinations in people with schizophrenia?
Yeah.
So how did you get from there to here?
That's such a fun question. All right. So here's the deal. When you go to graduate school to become a therapist, they don't ever tell you if you're going to be good at it. So we have to kind of qualify all of it, right? And so I
over that, Matt. Sorry.
I'm sorry. Oh no, that's fine. So I ended up, about $60,000 for my master's degree to become a therapist, and my specialty was schizophrenia, actually severe and persistent mental illness, multiple personality disorder, dissociative identity. Those sorts of things is what I focused on. It's really hard to make a living with that because most of those people are on disability and they don't pay. And then you have to deal with all of the insurance companies. And it was just a nightmare. So then I kind of went into private practice, and then I realized women don't want to talk to men and men don't want to talk to men. And they didn't like that I would tell them what they needed to fix because they didn't want to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So people mostly came to a therapist, and my friend said the same thing, to complain instead of get treatment. And I wanted to help people. So fast forward, I was driving home and I cried every day on the way home, just so you know, because it's abysmal. Like people, all they just do is dump their crap on you all day. And I'm okay with crying. I think it's actually a very manly thing to be in charge or be in touch with your emotions. And I drove home and my wife said to me, how much longer can you do this, man? Like you're a freaking mess. And I thought, that's a great question. So I went back into work the next day and I went to monster.com and I typed in coach because I also have my master's degree as a life coach. Two things came up. One of them was it was a $250,000 buy-in to be a Vistage coach. And I was broke. Like we were, I mean, I was debt broke. Right. And the other one was a guy named Ron Carson. And he was hiring coaches. And, long story short on that, they wouldn't hire me. I was very persistent. Found out later that Ron loves something called persidity, which is persistence mixed with stupidity. And that was me and still me to this day. And they finally hired me. And that's how I got into being a financial services coaching consultant.
That's fascinating. And then so you still are using, I have to assume, of course, you're using your coaching sort of experience, but still that therapy, the studies in that discipline, because so much of being a great coach is being able to really understand like underlying mindset and helping people understand how to overcome perceived constraints and obstacles and how to really help them become the best versions of themselves. And I can imagine as we're thinking about podcasts, bringing intimacy to conversations, like there's a therapy component to that for sure.
One of my favorite techniques that most people don't realize is as powerful as silence on podcasts. Now, usually it's not a long silence. Like, in active listening, you generally give 3 to 5 seconds of space after somebody says something. Basically what that does is that makes them uncomfortable, so they keep talking, right? It's a wonderful tool to basically peel the onion and get to the good stuff, right? I use silence on podcasts all the time. In fact, if you guys listen to our podcast, you'll find out very quickly, I don't really say very much, right? My job is redirection, rephrasing, and reframing. That's what my job is. We actually teach this. It's actually a huge component of what we want to be able to offer to our clients. But if you don't know what those 3 words are, please look them up, because if you learn how to use those 3 techniques in any conversation, people are going to want to talk to you more because it's about them, right? It's not about you. And that's why I said at the beginning, I'm not super comfortable here. I don't talk about myself like this often at all. I'm usually always talking about ProudMouth or my clients, or I'm highlighting when I interview people like you guys, right? That's my happy space because 1, I love stories, and 2, I really love listening.
So interesting, because when I think about just even my own personal journey, one of the things I thought about is like, how fascinating would it be to be like a therapist? Because like I'm coaching advisors all the time. And I remember even when I was in university considering studying psychology, instead I chose to study finance and economics. But really, economics is the psychology of human sentiment, really, actually, at the end of it. But I think what's interesting about it is when we think about marketing right now, and we're in the new school frame of marketing and we're on the new school podcast, this whole series, and we're in season 2 right now, is about authenticity and vulnerability, because we know that that is what connects people. But to your point, they can't get there and they can't create content that's authentic and vulnerable unless they're doing the work on themselves to be confident, to be okay with that, to be who they really are versus who they think they should be.
One of our taglines here is be your own loud, right? And part of that whole idea and the philosophical premise that builds for ProudMouth as an organization is we want our clients to unapologetically be themselves, because if they are, they have zero competition, because there's no other Candace and Meg, right? That's it. And now
Hashtag
you guys,
amen.
when I first got into this industry, which was in 2006, which would be a crappy time to get into this industry, but even as a coach and a consultant, but there was still a lot of bravado. And I know that still exists and it's unfortunate, but there is a substantial amount of bravado, especially in, at conferences. Well, how big is your office? How much production do you have? I'm $1 million, whatever. Look at my watch. Right. So, that's the sort of stuff that I think is starting to get chipped away at. And I think people realize that it isn't always about the stuff. It's about the experience. And that's what we know financial advisors want to give to their clients. What does retirement mean? What is all of this work that they're doing is so that their clients can live the life they've always wanted to live. In fact, that's probably 9 million people's tagline, right? And I believe that you're going to be a better advisor and be more true to yourself, much like, so I'm going to rewind. I didn't give myself permission to be myself until Kirk and I partnered. Period. I was Matt Halloran, the author, and I was Matt Halloran on Practice Makeover, and I was Matt Halloran, blah, 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 featured in the Wall Street Journal, all of that stuff. I didn't give myself permission to be silly and ridiculous and like a Muppet. I mean, I didn't allow myself to that because I thought I had to be somebody else. The minute that you give yourself that permission, you're truly authentic. That's when you have zero competition. And I also believe that you look at the world differently.
Well, I also think you have, in my experience, like more flow.
Yeah.
Like things come to you and like more ease is my experience in it. And I think that all of us has a story around like finding that authenticity and finding that natural flow. I've talked about it before, but at one stage in my career, I just had severe anxiety and brutal insomnia. And really, I had to do the inner work to understand and really answer the question, like, who am I and what am I meant for? And that still pops up every now and then. I notice like I start to get slightly anxious if something, and to me right now, it's always just a message that something is out of alignment. So it's just to say, hey, Candace, I'm here. Take a look at it. But the reason I bring that up is because I remember when I worked at United Capital and I was head of field management, I used to travel to all the different offices and I'd speak to advisors. And a lot of them would tell me that they were suffering from anxiety or they were suffering from insomnia. It would be like nighttime conversation because there was this intensity, this expectation of how, it's not just them, I mean, it's for everyone, but how they should be and how they needed to show up versus being able to demonstrate their expertise, but be their authentic selves.
There's a lot of work too. And I think that's in harkening back to my therapy days, which is why people would come in and just complain. They didn't actually want to do that work. Candace, the journey that you're on, that I'm on, and I know Meg is on too, it's it's hard, man. And it's scary. Like you like see warts and faults and oh my God, do I want to deal with this right now? And a lot of people just don't want to do that work. They would rather, kind of just go through life as easy as possible, right? Something that a mentor of mine said to me, which I absolutely loved, is most people are trying to arrive at death safely. I personally want to go scarred and full of bullet holes, right? Now, the bullet holes thing has a little different context today than it did many years ago. Like I would say maybe go up in flames, right? That would be fine for me. But I wanted to quote them directly on that. But I really do think that a lot of people just don't want to do that work. And since they don't want to do the work, they're never going to find that authentic self, which means they're never going to have that level of fulfillment that they could have to not only live their best life, but also provide the best service for their clients. Because man, once you're truly authentic with yourself, you realize you want and crave more of those relationships and conversation.
I think that there are so many people who don't want to do the work. And then I think that there are probably even more people who haven't been given the permission that we all feel that we have, or haven't felt as though they're in a safe space. Because in our industry in particular, to their point, there is so much bravado and ego. And so it makes it really difficult for people to feel like they're in a safe space to find their true selves and to find that alignment and to do the work and to know what types of resources and allies and coaches and consultants like exist within the industry to help to do that work and to help people find alignment between their vision and their values in a way that creates change. And that's why I get so excited about the work that we do at FiComm. I know you do this like same type of work within the same mindset and philosophy as FiComm. And that's why we've decided to partner up together on our podcast offering, which we're so pumped about. And I just think like these types of conversations are so crucial so that people in the industry can know that like they have a safe space with us, right? And that we have resources that are available oftentimes for free, just in like the type of content and the workshops and the events that we do. We also have coaching programs that take people through this, because my own story is probably very similar to yours, Matt, and that, similar to your time coaching at Carson and then my time before I launched FiComm, I just didn't have anyone give me the permission. Mm-hmm. And I really felt as though I was expected to show up in a specific way. And so some of that was absolutely expectations that I put on myself, but others were expectations that people, mostly men, put on me as a young female professional. And so, your Kirk is my Candace. Like when Candace and I started working together, it was like a life-changing experience for me because she gave me the permission, but she also gave me the framework by which I could really figure out like what is my vision? What are my values? What is the change that I want to create? And to say like, it's okay to just stay there. You don't have to do all of these other things. You don't have to show up in any other way other than the way that you want. And like that type of permission is life-changing.
Well, I do want to qualify that because I do realize that I do have the privilege of having that permission available to me more than others. And I cannot stress that enough. I know that I have friends of mine in financial services who still have to play that game because of all of the other things that I personally don't have to deal with as a straight white man. Right. And so, this has been my industry, right? I mean, you guys, it goes all one of my first for him. I'm chasing a rabbit bag. So you just opened up a can of worms for me. I'm sorry. So one of my first favorite clients was this woman who lives in Connecticut. She started she worked for like a big wirehouse in the late 70s, early 80s. And she used to tell me stories, what it was like for her to be there. Right. And I just think back, and then, so we were at a conference together. Her and I were at a conference together. We just happened to be at the same time. And some guy talked over her and interrupted her during a session, like a networking session. And I just looked at this guy and I looked at her and she's like, yeah, it's still the 80s in some people's mind. This woman was probably one of the most educated, best advisors I've ever met in my entire life, built a juggernaut practice. And this schmuck who probably, and again, the bravado, made $250,000 a year, and was still trying to sell to anybody who fogged a mirror, interrupted this woman who at the time was like a $4.5 million producer and worked 15 hours a week. Right. And that sort of stuff just drives me crazy. But here's the deal. If the schmuck gave him permission to not be a schmuck and to be himself, because that schmuckiness is a total front, right? My client gave herself permission to be herself, but she didn't do it until she was like 50, right? And then when she did, everything got even better for her. But I just wanted I want you guys to know that that's something that we pay very close attention to, is that head start that some of us actually have in all of this, that we need to be cognizant of and not necessarily be ashamed of, but at least bring to surface that we're aware of it.
I want to acknowledge everything you just said. And something that I had a couple of questions just kind of circling back around there. So, and okay. I know, Matt, you've done tremendous work and you continue to do tremendous work in the industry around championing diversity, being an ally. I know recently you had a LinkedIn post where you shared, and thank you for tagging us, that was incredible, where you said you were on the top 100 influencer list for our industry, but there were no women tagged. So, or I think there were 3 women or something like that. And so you listed all the women and it looked like that post went viral. How many views did it get?
So 24,000 as of now, hands down the most interaction I've ever had with a post. I think we had 400 comments, but the coolest thing was there were 300 more women tagged in it. Like, oh, this is so cool to see all of these women and men calling out all of these amazing women in financial services. And somebody had said to me, they called me offline. And she said, that is what a real influencer should do, is an influencer should use their influence to raise other people up. And that's not what most people think an influencer is supposed to be, which is actually a huge component of what we want to be as ProudMouth. We want to use our influence to raise the voices of really the Main Street advisor, to turn them into a Main Street authority, but most importantly, to try to find ways to empower them to feel that they can be more and more influential. Because here's the deal, guys, influence marketing is the only marketing that's left. Everything else is crap. You don't have the buy my car sort of stuff. That doesn't work anymore. Nobody wants to hear that crap. They want to build a relationship with you when it's convenient for them, which is why content marketing and podcasting, even video, is just, that's the future. And we have to pay attention to that. This is the new school podcast. So we should probably bring that up. Yeah.
I was just thinking about one of the problems that we are hearing quite a bit in the industry. And I'm so privileged. I get to work with a lot of executives across the industry. And one of the things that we're working on often is that when you look at overall, like today's digital sales funnel and lead gen, what we're seeing is that it's these local sort of like very either geographically centralized or even better, like really narrow focused niche market advisors that are having like phenomenal marketing success. That's what we see with our boot camp and with our Amplify podcast offer. And then when you sort of move up to these larger organizations that often have a national presence, they're really struggling, right? Like client acquisition costs are skyrocketing, conversion costs are plummeting. And this is not specific to any brand. The only sort of
client acquisition costs are going up, you mean?
Yes, did I say that wrong?
You said plummeting, yeah.
Sorry, client acquisition costs are skyrocketing.
Yes.
Conversion is plummeting. Mm-hmm. And it's the commonality between these businesses that, I'm having these conversations with, is just that they're large in scope and they're national brands and they're controlling the marketing sort of from the top down. Mm-hmm. And to your point around influence marketing is all that's left. Like that's the hard work that I'm doing right now with executives across the industry, is to really help them understand, like, how can you leverage influence marketing when you're a large national brand? And like, how do you pull in the power of human to human connection, new school vulnerability, authenticity when you're talking about a brand versus an advisor? And so that's where I think there's just, I love the conversation from every angle, because I love it in one way. To me, I'm like, yes, this is why. And like, we've always been like the champion of the individual advisor, right? Like our work helps to create the opportunity for individual advisors to work with more people and deliver the good work, even when we're working with enterprises, because it has the trickle down effect. But I also love the challenge of trying to solve that at scale, right? And like, how do you think about humanizing brands in a way that they can take advantage of the opportunity for influence marketing? Because I totally agree with you. That's basically what's left. And I see you thinking, so I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, you just triggered, and I hadn't really thought about this before. So I went to the Fearless Investing Summit recently. Aaron Klein's done it. Like I think about that dude, man, and he has built an entire culture. I mean, basically off of a piece of small technology, a risk, now they offer way more stuff, and I'm not trying to minimize what they offer, but it was freaking Riskalyze at the beginning, right? A risk tolerant score. But he, from that top position of leadership, has truly used his influence to help grow everything. And what he's done, which I think all CEOs can do, is they still need to be that kind of figurehead. But what he's done is he's empowered everybody from him down to be able to have their own voice. And I think in corporate America, with a lot of the larger relationships that you might have, there is a layer of protection and concern that those middle people might not be representing the ultimate brand the way that they are. But I really do believe, so there's, like Brian McLaughlin from Redtail. I mean, there's CEOs that I can think of in financial services who have given themselves, that permission to be that. And then when all of the people who are under them look up and say, oh my gosh, look at how awesome this leadership is. I'm not trying to say podcasting is the solution for everything, but when we first started, one of our big target markets was going to be companies like that, so that CEOs and executive people could have an internal podcast to help build that brand, that culture. Hear from the CEO, hear what she has to say, why she's saying it, why it's important, how is this applicable to me? That crash and burn immediately. So, okay, well, that was a good, Matt chased that rabbit. Now we're going to chase another one. But I really do believe it's the same level of permission. These CEOs of organizations that have allowed themselves to be themselves and be open and out, it affects the entire company. And what we've seen with those two examples specifically, Brian selling Redtail to Orion for an undisclosed lot of money, right? And then Aaron Klein, right, who has built this culture. I have only been to one other conference, and that's Carson, that felt like Fearless Investing. It was crazy. They've totally built that culture, and it's from Aaron, just like it's from Ron. So.
Matt, I feel like we could have like a series, but with Matt Halloran here, I mean, it's just been incredible. I feel like even in this short interview, like I've gotten to know you like better and like deeper. One of the questions that we get across the board, we are so bullish on podcasting, and especially video podcasting, for all the reasons you outlined. We've run the Advisor Podcast Awards 2 years in a row. It has been such a gift to be able to do that. And our podcast about authenticity and vulnerability, which we're on right now, won Wealth Management's Digital Campaign of the Year. And I think when that happened, we were like, oh my goodness.
It was a nice signal.
Like that, like other people believe the things that we believe, and that through the power of podcasting, it's really that vehicle for change, to like connect us all, to understand that we're humans, to understand, the psychology behind it, like how do we connect with each other. But one of the things that we hear across the board is sometimes we're working with advisors who are into it and they get it. But every now and then we'll hear from people that will say, there's too many advisor podcasts. Like, why should there be another? Like, we have a set response to it, which we say, like, no one would say that about blogging. Like, why would you say that about like podcasting? So like, when you hear that, if you hear that, what's your viewpoint on it?
Well, I mean, I don't mean to be mean, but I usually laugh out loud because it's one of those things like nobody says, well, there's too many Twitter profiles or there's too many blogs or too many websites, or it's like every other aspect of content marketing, right? What is there, like 1 kabillion videos uploaded to YouTube every day, right? It just seems baffling to me. But here's the deal. If you're going to do another podcast on the power of a Roth conversion, yeah, you're done. You're right? Don't do it. That's because it's been done. It's been done. But if you have a podcast that's about you and about how you bring great value to your clients, and we believe it should be a conversation. And so there are some people who don't necessarily agree with this. There are advisors who think they should just solo cast, which is talk at you for 30 minutes. We know, just so you know, research does not play out that actually is a powerful marketing technique. It needs to be a conversation. So in our format, we use an interview conversation style with a professional interviewer that actually has a conversation just like this with advisors. That sort of thing, what happens, just like what Meg, when you said that, you just made me think about something that, because of the way that you framed that statement, that's the power of having somebody else there to help you sound way, way, way better, honestly. And on top of that, they can say stuff about you that you can't, or that you maybe shouldn't, because it comes across as being cocky and arrogant. So that's how we really solve that. But the initial question is, no, it's a load of crap, to be really honest. There aren't too many podcasts out there. In fact, there isn't even like 2% of advisors podcasting. So out of the 400,000 financial services professionals that are in our industry right now, less than 2% are actively podcasting with a podcast of any substance at all.
And we know consumers are listening to podcasts. I mean, I'll speak to anyone, check out their phone. They've got podcasts downloaded on it to people in your network. Matt, thank you so much for coming on the New School podcast. Before we close out, we ask every single one of our guests, what does the New School mean to you?
Well, I think the New School for you guys, you've said it, and I love how consistent you are with this in the entire podcast. It's give yourself the permission to be yourself. Here's the deal. Even if you don't like yourself that much, that's okay, right? Work through that later. But the minute that you allow yourself to be yourself, unapologetically be yourself, you have no competition. Do you still have people who want to go after the same clients as you do? Yes. But this is a relationship game, and it always has been. It's not a sales game. It's not, who can, Chet Holmes themselves to be the ultimate sales machine, right? It's building relationships with people when it's convenient for them. Then they buy from you. And you don't have to sell anymore if you do this right. Can you imagine how liberated you would feel if you didn't have to try to close people all the time? That people would come in and be like, you know what, Candace, Meg, I'm ready to join Amplify. Because I know that happens with you guys, because we've talked about that, right? It's because you built such an amazing library of engaging, intimate, personal content that they know who you are, what you do, and what makes you unique and different. So they come to you ready to buy. Here's the deal, everybody. Everybody is Googling everybody all the time, right? So if you're not podcasting, your clients are listening to somebody else's podcast. If you're not on social media, somebody else is talking to your clients. This is not a choice anymore. This is the reality of business. And part of the New School thinking you need to have is you need to be where your ideal clients are at the time that they're there with unique content. And when you do that, and you do it for 18 to 24 months, it will entirely change your business.
It will. And thank you so much for underscoring that so beautifully. And Matt, one of the many things I love about you is that you have such amazing insight, and you show up as such this incredible demonstration of what you mean. So it helps people to learn in ways that they wouldn't otherwise be able to. So thank you for all of that. Where can people find you if they're listening to this podcast and they want to connect?
Really LinkedIn. I mean, I know that's probably maybe not what you're looking for. I mean, you go to the website proudmouth.com, but really seriously, I communicate, you connect with me on LinkedIn, we'll talk. Right. So I absolutely love LinkedIn. I think it's a wonderful medium. So yeah, find Matt Halloran on LinkedIn. If you type my name in, I'm usually one of the first 3. I've been on there for a really long time. So I would love to connect with anybody on LinkedIn if they wouldn't mind.
Matt, such a pleasure. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening and subscribing. And if you enjoyed this, writing a review. This podcast episode is sponsored by FiComm's Advisor Marketing Bootcamp. As part of our bootcamp every month, we host a free marketing masterclass series with experts on everything from current marketing trends like advisor YouTube and podcasting to how to optimize your LinkedIn profile or communicate during uncertain markets. These classes are highly interactive and practical with a focus on how to execute and implement. We also take live questions in our Dial In Advisor segment, so sign up in the link below or at FiCommPartners.com.